Use the Force, Luke. Let go. I'm Chris Spivey.
And I'm Eddy Webb.
And today we're here to talk about Mobile Suit Gundam F91. There are some jokes that never get old. And the fact I had this quote up about Cecily in the thing for Eddy, he even highlighted it because I think he had a comment about it. And before we started recording, I made a few Star Wars hints towards him that he thought I was going to let go.
No, I should have known better. I should have known better. And yet here we are 3 years later. I'm still surprised by your shenaniganry.
When have I ever not doubled and tripled down on a joke?
Hey, you know what this joke being proved by? Doing it even more and harder.
It has been a long time since we referenced a 3-time joke gag.
To be fair.
I will have to do it a couple more times to make it funny, though.
But yeah, Mobile Suit Gundam F91. We're doing 90s anime, 90s mecha anime now.
Yes. So thank you for coming along with us for our break. I hope everyone's enjoyed some Westerns, but we figured about now we'd want to take a little detour. But seeing how much Eddy had enjoyed that Western lineup I'd done, I think I could have snuck in another episode or two before we really needed to break.
To be fair, like one thing I've been learning over the years of doing this is that when I'm feeling like, I could probably do 1 or 2 more episodes, that's actually a good time to take a break. Because a couple times where it's like, okay, now I think I need a break, and then we have the break. When I come back, it's a little bit harder to shift. But like, if I'm excited to come back to it after we do our break, then usually I feel like the next chunk is much easier to get through. We probably did it right, and certainly Billy the Kid vs. Dracula is an excellent time to kind of go, okay, you know what? Let's take a break from this for a moment. We've done that. Let's talk about other movies that are maybe not great.
So I actually thought really hard about changing the document before. If I knew that you didn't link the document until we started the show, I was going to change it and have it start with Jesse James meets Frankenstein's daughter. The movie that's paired with Billy the Kid versus Dracula.
Right. But then I would have freaked out. But like, what's going on? Did I get something wrong? Did I watch the wrong movie?
Yeah, and then the joke wouldn't be as funny. But if you just open it when we start, that's when it would have been cool. If people haven't realized, I probably did not dig this movie, is why I'm actively not talking about it.
Well, honestly, I'm kind of glad you said that because so especially with these breaks, I find we tend to be a little more experimental. Like, this is stuff that we'll just give it a shot and see what we think. And when I was like, it's Mobile Suit Gundam. That's a pretty solid choice, right? We're usually the last time we talked about Gundam, we fucking loved it. This will be great. It's Gundam. And I started watching. I was like, oh no, right? And it wasn't like immediately. It was like after about an hour or so. I'm like, oh, this might be bad. I still have a lot of thoughts. It took me more like half an hour before I got hit that point. Frankly,
I'll even tell you when we get to the summary where it happened.
Sure, that's fair. As is common, usually one of us does the research, the other person kind of stumbles into it. But I do see the research notes, and one of the notes I see here confirms what I suspected because as I was watching it, I have seen. Let me take a step back. The original '70s Gundam was compressed into 3 theatrical movies. Like the whole show was compressed into 3 movies, and those movies are the ones that Netflix has the rights to. Netflix doesn't have the rights to the original Gundam cartoon. They have the rights to the 3 theatrical movies that were made by editing them all together. I have watched 1 1/3 of those. And they remind me a lot of when we covered the Daleks cut down version of at least we didn't cover it. I mentioned it, that Rusty Davies cut down the Daleks like 8 episodes down to an hour and a half. And this has the same vibe of like, was there an entire cartoon that just got cut down to this hour and a half long movie because there's so much just random changes in tone and story and subplots that just seem to be missing? And then it turns out, this was apparently supposed to be a 13 episode cartoon that kind of just got canceled.
No, my friend. You see in the notes it mentions that 13 episodes.
Yeah.
Originally, this was supposed to be a 50 episode series. They'd written
Oh.
about 12 or 13 episodes when that's when they had like I don't know if there were strikes, but there were staffing disputes and all these other internal political issues that happened. And they said,
Oof.
fuck it, we'll just make it into a movie. And they cut down those 13 things to this hour and a half that felt like 6 hour movie.
Yeah, and, like, this is supposed to be, like, I think the 15th anniversary or something like that. It's supposed to be, like, an anniversary thing too.
Yeah. So it's I I don't want to. So let me take a step back. I think when we talked about Gundam Wing was the only Gundam show I'd ever seen. I saw that as a kid a
Right.
bajillion years
Mhm,
ago.
same.
So I have very little input or insight or emotional attachment to Gundam. Macross and Robotech, totally different story.
Sure, right.
And so I randomly chose this when we looked for 90s anime because I figured Gundam, we talked about Gundam Wing, it'd be a nice sort of linkage and maybe get me into Gundam and I try it. And the movie itself, I think, was originally supposed to have been built to create new characters, new plots, and everything else as a new entry point for new viewers.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a new what we'd call in comics a new jumping on point.
And from how it was constructed, now that's the end of the podcast talk. I'm gonna stop there and say one of the things they did, I'm gonna do a total change, is they wanted to make the Gundam smaller and like change the size of the Gundams, and they changed it even internally in the movie world. And in the movie world, they talked about how it was more expensive and instead make them smaller, makes them more flexible. So that was also something they're going to do for the model kits, so
Mhm.
that the model kits would be smaller and people get into it and they think they'd be cheaper to make. In the end, it was the exact opposite because they had to. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go finish thought.
So it was a shift because they had to do a different scale and they had to create new technology for the multicolored smaller parts that were needed. It was more complex and even the cost itself continued to increase. Additionally, the
Jeez.
fans hated that, especially the model kit fans.
Sure, yeah. Um, what I was gonna say is, we did our toy cartoon run of the 80s and 90s, and we joked a lot about how functionally they were glorified toy commercials, and there was and the whole cycle of it started off as um the cartoon happened to sell toys, and eventually the cartoon was being made specifically to sell the toys, you know. But as I understand it, Gundam and there are other cartoons and live action shows in Japan that kind of follow some model now, was very much driven by the model kits and the toys. More of the model kits. The whole Gundam model kit thing is a huge ecosystem. The only Western equivalent I could possibly think of is Warhammer, right, where everything is driven by the models in Warhammer. You know, so I'm not surprised that there was this tension of like, well, I creatively want to go in this direction. It's like, yeah, but we need it to be this for toy reasons or for model kit reasons.
Yeah. So it was that piece that was interesting is I've never been a model person, which we've talked about. I think
Mhm.
you do some model kits, but I had a college roommate, that was his thing. The same college roommate that really got me into anime hardcore. And that's because, all right, I think I told this story before, but I'm gonna take a minute anyway because I don't want to talk
Sure.
about this movie. Um, when I went to the university, it was such a small university. There weren't a lot of role players and there weren't a lot of anime people. So instead, they made one big art TTRPG anime club. So the
Right.
anime people would join, they'd play role playing games, and the role playing game people would watch anime. So it was
Mhm.
sort of, we need to be together just so we'd have enough people to do whatever the thing is we want to do.
Right.
And that's when I met my friend there that really got me into anime. And that's why I think, a specific love of anime from the 70s through the 90s, because that was like
Mhm.
really their thing. And they would build all these intricate model kits for like hours on end. Even their apartment was just filled with them everywhere.
Mhm.
And can I tell you, in college, in small Southern college, that trying to bring back gates to apartments filled with model kits, because we were roommates for a while, is not a winning situation, Eddie.
I can imagine. I can certainly imagine.
This and there's
No,
some people who say, but wait, what if they were geeky? It is a different level of geeky to be in the model kits.
yeah, no, totally. Especially at that time period because uh, there wasn't there was a model building culture in the US in terms of, like, building, like, cars and, ships and whatnot, that was considered to be on the border of acceptable, but then if you get anything sci-fi related, it falls off a cliff in terms of weirdness, right?
Yeah.
Um, for me, my model kit stuff, relatively brief, basically, I just needed a pandemic hobby, and I wanted to try to find something that, used my hands and not involved, writing. It was creative, but not in a way that involved the stuff I do for work. Um, and so, a friend of mine suggested what's called Gunpla now, which is basically Gundam model kits. Um, and there are a whole bunch of super cheap intro level stuff, and most of the ones now don't even involve glue. Yeah, you could just snap them together. The decals are relatively easy to establish. There's actually some really good entry level kits, all the way up to $150, $200 monstrosities that take like years of your life to build. I mean, like, there's all sorts of different ranges now. And so I was like, I didn't know half the shows or reference. Like, oh, this is like a cool robot. I like robots. I'll build this robot thing. And someone would say, oh, that's reference to, you know, F91, or that's a reference to G Gundam. And I was like, okay, but it's a cool robot, Um, the intersection of people who like to build these kits and do not watch the shows is extremely small, and that's part of the reason why I fell out of it, because, like, I don't really wanna watch I like media. I wouldn't do this podcast if I didn't, but I also don't wanna watch the same cartoon for 40 years. I already have that version. That's Transformers. I've already got that fandom. I don't want a second one.
Oh god. It's funny you mentioned Transformers too, because I have a Transformers thing for this too.
Oh, no.
So the size of the model kits were different, and for the Gundams themselves, from a little bit that since this is all research for me, it is not stuff that I just know.
Mhm.
Is that the creator wanted to reduce the size of the Gundams because they got up to being, I want to say, 22 meters tall. And so
Right.
originally they wanted to try to get them down to 10 meters tall, but in the end they were go with 15 meters, sort of provide a scale to make them smaller overall, to have a different sort of distinctive vibe and look to them.
Mhm.
Which, did that bother you as a Gundam fan to see these smaller Gundams, or could you not tell the difference?
I could tell the difference. Until you brought it up, I didn't even realize that was a thing. I mean, now that you bring it up, I can certainly see that because, uh, I think we talked about this when we talked about Wing, but super short, long story short, there's an entire genre called the super robot genre, which Gundam is actually an argument against. Basically, is that you have this robot and it does amazing things, and that's awesome. Um, and then the original Gundam was basically okay, but if we actually take giant robots in the military seriously for a second, that's actually really horrifying, and that's was the original conceit of the whole Gundam franchise was super, and much like The Boys or Watchmen, of like, if you take this super powered heroic concept and apply it to something vaguely resembling reality, it actually does break down, and what does that look like? Um, so it is, of course, funny when something like Wing comes along and it's more or less super robot again. It's like, okay, but that's the whole point of your franchise. Um, so these super robots are supposed to be big and powerful and tall because that was the style of particularly the 70s, because um, kaiju became a big thing, and so robots had to be roughly that size. And then, of course, with shows like Ultraman and what we know as Power Rangers, they had to get people in suits, and so basically, if someone's going to be a suit to be a monster, someone's to be a suit to be a robot, they have to be roughly the same size because they're just guys in suits. And so robot scales in general became really big, and Gundam brought it down a bit. But from what these notes are saying, it seems like it started creeping up again. They tried to bring it down again and started creeping up again. So I think I'm sure there are people who are really into this that could talk at length about the different variations on it. But to me, it was just like, oh, that's a big robot. Yep, that's about right.
So my question for you then is, you're a fan of something else I'm about to mention. How tall is Voltron?
Well, see, like Voltron is definitely in the super robot thing. Because he is technically 5 other robots put together into one even bigger, huger robot. So I mean, he's bigger than the Gundams, as I understand it. I don't know exactly how tall Voltron is
Hmm.
because, to be honest, don't care. But he's big.
Then
He's a big one.
let's make it something you care about. How tall is Optimus Prime versus a Gundam here?
Depends on what continuity we're talking about, and also who animated him that day, especially in the original version. Because
Uh, let's
I'll say
go with the Transformers movie Optimus Prime that we covered with the Mike Pondsmith himself.
The Mike Pondsmith, our absolutely best episode in which we don't talk about the thing we're actually there to talk about. So
We're
yeah,
more
I
on point
think.
that day than we have been a lot of things.
Well, fair. We were on point, Mike. Not so much. No, well, Mike's great. No, so Optimus in the movie was about the size of Megatron, which doesn't help at all. He's about 2/3. Well, sorry. Hot Rod was about 2/3 the size of him. And when Hot Rod is next to Daniel, Daniel is about a third the size of Hot Rod. So if you say Daniel's about 1.5 meters, mathematically put Optimus about 8 to 10 meters tall. I'm doing it in European units just to fuck with you.
Yeah, interesting. So Optimus would be smaller than the Gundams that we see in this episode.
Yes. Yeah, that's about right.
3 to 5 meters.
Right. Because one thing that Gundam and Transformers both do when they're good is humans are part of the context for the robots, right? There's a lot of both that are not good, don't get me wrong. But the point of both of those shows ultimately is the robots have an impact on humans, and so humans need to be visually have to be in the same frame as the robot. That's why, let's take Bumblebee actually from Transformers. Bumblebee is not that much bigger than a human. And that's one of the reasons why Bumblebee becomes kind of the surrogate kid robot. 'Cause he's shorter than all the other Autobots, but also he's about as tall as a human. So that's kind of the contrast of like he can be comfortably in the frame and comfortably in the same, even though if you actually transform him, a car is bigger than a human, and he has to fit inside of it. There's the whole problem with that. Gundam tries to
Bumblebee just has a lot of junk in the trunk, right?
See each other. Let's not talk about the episode where a transformer sitting inside of another transformer while standing beside a third transformer, and they're all different sizes. Because side note, do you want to know what animation studio did both that Transformers cartoon and this one? Is Sunrise. So, a mark quality there.
Well, all right. So if we keep bringing it up, that'll bring up the fact that looking at these Gundams made me think of the Autobots and Decepticons because they have little emblems on their chests. That was like, wait a second, is that a Decepticon?
Yeah, no. As soon as I started watching this, I was like, this has got to be Sunrise. I've watched a lot of Sunrise cartoons. So I was like, I feel like this is Sunrise. I was like, it's 91. It's about the right time frame. So I looked it up. I was like, yeah, it is. And it has a certain ropey charm to its animation. But one of the things I will say is that the people behind Gundam, one of the things they wanted very much to do is to make this Gundam as a whole concept is like it's supposed to be a war. And so
Cool.
These Gundams are military equipment. And so there has to be a consistency there to sell that concept. In spite of that, Sunrise found new ways to screw that up. So don't get me wrong, it's not good. But unlike Transformers, where it's like, I don't know, they're alien robots. They just do shit, I guess, which I love. Gundam is supposed to be more, no, there are specifications, and there are a certain kind of geek that is really into that exact thing. And that's awesome. And I support your fandom, and I think that's great. It's not mine. I don't care about that kind of specifications, but it should be the kind of consistency that, for example, could be turned into a model kit.
Are you inferring geekdom like how I know the Doctor has a Type 40 versus the Type 61s that popped up for a while, or the random TARDIS number the Master would have that would always be more advanced than the Doctor's, but yet the Type
or
40 is an old reliable warhorse.
or the fact that the TARDIS dematerialization noise does change slightly depending on which model of TARDIS is on screen at the time. Yes, I completely recognize that there are different areas where I'm excited about that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Gundam specific
I,
is not one of them. But I mean, I
I
recognize
wanted to
there's
set the groundwork before any of the Gundam fans come after us, so they
sure,
will
sure, no,
establish that they can't. Wait a second, you Doctor Who
no,
fan.
I am not saying like some digression. There's a friend of mine. He's one of my tattoo artists back in Atlanta. He's really into model trains, right? About my age. He's really into model trains. Um, and he does amazing stuff with model trains. Like he builds. He's really into specifically getting graffiti onto the trains and building stations that look a lot like the more rundown areas of Atlanta.
Hmm.
And so, like, he will take pictures of graffiti and try to authentically replicate that graffiti. Like, he's really amazing detail. And so he has strong opinions on, like, okay, the trees need to be a certain scale and the people need a certain scale because these are the kinds of scale of trains I have. And they have to all look right together when I'm building these scenes out. Right. And my understanding is that there's a chunk of Gundam model fandom that feels similarly, right? It's like these things need to be scaled correctly with each other, so that way when I make dioramas or pictures or do toy photography or whatever, it all has to look like it fits correctly. So the shows need to also reflect that similar scale in a way that other super robot shows don't need to do. That's a very distinctive element of the Gundam franchise.
Interesting.
We are spending way more time talking about the models than we are talking about the movie.
All right. Do you know why? Because you've already stated that the model piece of this is integral to the experience. And as someone that doesn't know a lot about models, I want to talk about the little bit I know, and everything that you're telling me is pretty much new information for me. And once again, we do this podcast for us at the end of the day.
No, that's totally fair.
Love you, fans, but we do it for us.
Right. Uh, so going back to this movie, the thing that continues to baffle me, I think, as because like you, one of the things I knew about going into this was supposed to be a jumping on point. So it seemed like it was a very good thing. Hey, cool, here's great. Here's a pre-wing Gundam that has because let me take a step back real quick. This is around the last gasp of all Gundams are in the same continuity before they started saying, "Well, screw it, they're all in different continuities after this." Um, this was all part of what's called the Universal Century continuity, and that's the, I guess, spine continuity. A lot of the Gundams, in some way, shape, or form, fit into the Universal Century continuity, but not all of them do.
Yeah.
Including one of my favorites, which is G Gundam, which is basically literally giant robots wrestle in space. There's even a ring around the Earth, made up of electronic beams and posts. So like it's ridiculous, and I love it, and horribly racist. But anyway, so this is, I think, one of the last gasps of like, well, it's all in the same continuity. This is tried to
And
kind
that's
of,
why
like
they
you said,
punted it 30 years into the future.
right. It reminds me of Battletech Dark Ages, right? Of like, we want to keep the same continuity, but we have enough in the future that we can more or less, we're not rebooting it, but we're refreshing it so that people can come in and not have to know all the previous history. But if they want to, it's there and they can see how it all connects up.
Yeah. That
So to
never
make this
works that well.
movie so opaque, right? I got bits and pieces of this because I am familiar with Gundam on a rudimentary level, but they throw out concepts that just don't bother explaining at all. So it's wild to me that was the point of this, is to be here, if you're new to Gundam, watch this movie, because like, I would not recommend this movie to new Gundam people because like it's hard to follow. So it's wild to me that was the design intention, as it were.
So I guess a spoiler that it won't be a spoiler. This could have made potentially a great 50 episode series. That's where I'm going to end
Yeah,
my final comment to
yeah.
come back to later. Putting it up front as a movie, we'll get into that in a minute. All right. So one of the things they want to do, though, they put it 30 years in the future. So it's like the year 123 in their Universal thing, which is
Mhm.
30 years after Char's counterattack, which was a different anime movie that came out.
Right.
And what they wanted to do with this was to make the protagonist more likable, who our protagonist is Seabook.
Seabrook.
I have
Yep.
some issues with that in of itself, but they wanted to make it more likable, more approachable, and everything else, and less ambiguous than what it was for Char's counterattack, which
Right.
is a great initial impulse. But they also wanted,
Mhm.
for instance, wanted the movie to have a happier ending than they've had before, and lots of moving pieces like that.
Right.
Your laughter is already indicative of
The
different
laughter
things we're
about
going to touch
we'll
on.
have a happier ending. About the ending. Yeah, we'll get there, but wow, yeah.
Ah. Do we want to get into the movie? Because we prattled around, we've danced around, we talked about model kits. We could talk about how this was Sunrise's first film using an actual widescreen format production, if you want.
Really? No, I guess right, 'cause, yeah, Transformers movie wasn't widescreen. 'Cause Sunrise did the movie Transformers movie too. Um, so yeah, I guess this would have been one of the first widescreen ones.
Yeah.
Um, oh, I'm seeing notes just because apparently, previous ones just cropped the top and bottom off. That might be why I'm thinking of it. Because uh, again, I'm exactly this kind of nerd for Transformers, is that there are 2 releases for Transformers over the years, and one of them is widescreen, one of them is standard screen because they got when they made it to VHS, they basically just the bits they lopped off, they just put them back on when they reformatted it for the VHS tapes,
Hmm.
and also cut out Spike's swear, which was only in there to bump the rating up to PG so they can get more people in to make more money, which I'm sure we talked
Oh,
about.
I don't know. We talked about a lot of stuff that 3 hour, 4 hour recording.
Right.
All right, I'm starting the summary.
Yep.
The year is UC0123. We open on a hissing sound in space before Hatch blows off of the space colony Frontier 4 in mobile suits. The military arm of the Cosmo Babylonia, the Crossbone Vanguard, zoom in. And then we shift focus from that obvious assault on the space colony to a campus Miss Countryside contest. Much to her own resistance, Cecily Fairchild wins the contest. Right here, Eddie, is when I was already done.
Sure.
Outside the station, an orange spacesuited guy follows the invaders, and as they continue to wreck shit right away. As a battle in civilian areas, the body count racks up quickly as people try to evacuate. Seabrook Arno saves Cecily and his sister as they wonder about their mom. Cecily changes into action clothes and hits the streets as war plays out everywhere. Through a miracle of timing, all the teens meet up in a truck with the kids are protecting. We have a black character! Yeah, yeah, yeah! Black character in anime. Go, author, go! And they take refuge inside of a museum.
Right.
That's where we're pausing.
So I'm not surprised when you said 5 minutes in. I figured it was the beauty contest because we have gone at length about your absolute hate for Min May and my largely ambivalence to Min May, and this is another version of that trope, right? Of like the pretty girl whose beauty inspires the troops to keep fighting. It's a really, really unfortunate trope. It's even worse in 91, right? So like it wasn't great
Mm-hmm.
back then. It's even worse in 91, but it still sticks around. It's a thing that exists. Um, the reason why I kind of like this opening is because one of the things, again, I keep saying one of the things. I'll say a lot of what Gundam does. All of this is with the lens of I've only seen like a few Gundam series, and I'm not watching the length and breadth of Gundam. But based on my knowledge of hearing people talk about Gundam and also what I've seen, one of the things I think it does as a franchise really well is when it juxtaposes the impact war has on everyday people. And so having people going, "Oh, you should go to the beauty contest," and, "Oh, I don't wanna go." It's demeaning and demoralizing, and, that's the biggest problem you have in your life is how people will see you if you go up to do a beauty contest, and then 10 minutes later, people are dying all around you, and that rapidly stops being your biggest problem. The shock of that change, I think, is sold really well in this opening. What they have chosen to represent normal life is a bit bleh, I agree. But everything around the beauty contest of like just, again, they think people just living their lives and having just really mundane lives, even though they're living in space. And then what are functionally, as far as we can tell at this point in time, robot pirates break in and start murdering people. It's a huge shock.
I agree. Part of my issue is, and why I made my comment, is that if it had been an animated series, they could have spread out these exposition dumps. And that
Completely agree.
is my biggest hurdle for this film is exposition dump. Because there isn't a chance to ever get into the film or try to enjoy it because people are too busy throwing exposition at me. It's like the subtle drop of them being an engineering student. You don't know anything about that. You're just an engineering student that's not even in my class.
Right.
That line sticks with me. It is awkward as because I need to know that Seabrook's an engineering student. I need to know that he's not in your class, but I need to know that you're also friends. Like do 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 do, and that Cecily has nice legs. Just to round it all out in one big beat there. That's like 2 sentences of the movie.
Fair, right? And I get that. And certainly at this point in the movie, I was like, just had to have been edited down from a wider story. And turns out I was right. Um, I completely agree with you on that. Um, for me, this chunk of the movie, and to be super clear, this is about the only time I'm going to be nice about this movie, right? It was like my even just go downhill after this. But at this point in the movie, um, like I do feel that they do spend more time than I expected really showing how horrible this is. Like at one point in time, you and I have the same note. It shows you how much stuck out. A woman's running with her child, and someone shoots at one of the robots. A shell gets ejected from the gun, hits her in the head, and fucking kills her. Just
And they linger on it.
dead, and they linger on that, right? And she wasn't shot down by the enemy. It's not even friendly fire. It's just an accident on the
Collateral
battlefield that
damage.
came from an ally. Yeah, it's just collateral damage. And that was like, okay, if the whole movie's like this, I'm gonna be into it, right? I'm gonna be into them really digging into the cost of war. It's not. It becomes highly political, dramatic nonsense very quickly. And it's like, if it was also just highly political, dramatic nonsense, I did also love Gundam Wing over the course of 50 episodes, not cramming into an hour and a half.
And I wanted to spend a lot of time before we started about the size of the mecha. Like, supposedly they shrank them down to be they're 15 meters tall. That's when we got in a big
Mm,
model discussion. But specifically to mention this movie shows a great scale difference between humans and I'm calling them mecha. I'm not going to say mobile suits all the
sure.
time. I'm just going to say mecha. Between the humans and the mecha, from how small and insignificant they are versus the mecha, which is something that doesn't always play out in a lot of different, especially 90s anime for mecha that we've seen. Like it's
Right.
here, you can feel it in like that death scene, for instance, is a perfect example of that because that shell was the size of essentially that woman that hit her.
Yeah, exactly. The only mega show I can think of that you and I have agreed the scale really worked, was actually, the noirish one. Oh, I might have like a name of it.
The
The
big
one that was
O.
the Big O. Yeah, thank you. Uh, that was when we both agreed, like, oh, you can really feel the scale of these giant robots. And in this chunk of the movie, I agree. The movie loses that
Oh yeah.
pretty quickly after this, but in
I,
this
I
opening part, you really feel it.
much like you, I want to be complimentary for the things I really liked.
Right.
And I love that, which is also goes back to my note that's literally right here. Is this a horror anime what we're watching right now? Because all of it has horror feel.
Kind of, yeah. Um, and I mean, you mentioned scale. Like another thing that I have found inconsistent across Gundam is nearly all of the Gundam I have experienced has been in space stations, right? Very, very little of it is planet side. Apparently, that is a trope that has shifted over the past decade or so, but all of my experience of it generally has been ships. And so, but they just present them as if they were just towns, right? Um, and so the scale of these stations are massive. And in the initial broaching of it, and this is where I start to ding Sunrise. The mecha are clearly big, but you can see the station kind of in context with them as they're coming in. So you can see that this is a station. You see chunks of a station, and you can see some of the edge of the station. But then you cut inside, and like it's just a massive town. There's sky, and there's no indication any of this is holographic or anything. These are just huge open spaces.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful, but immediately I'm like, that station should be like 100 times the size of the one we saw when they were breaking in.
So I guess I don't see that because that was a close-up view of them versus like the other shots we get of the station throughout the course of this ongoing carnage.
Right. I guess my point is that because everyone involved who was involved with the Gundam franchise were very adamant about the suits and how they looked, it seemed like they didn't have the same attention to the ephemera, the station, the
Gotcha.
other vehicles, stuff like that. And so those ended up being more inconsistent than the mechas, because there was no one building models of the station. No one's building models of the tanks and the cars. So those can be more awful. And Sunrise is bad about scale, frankly.
Yeah. Eddy, what? Oh, the tailor cruising around in his little truck that we get some even exposition from the tailor. That is how exposition heavy this movie is. But I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about Arthur, the black character. Eddy, I was so excited that we're watching 90s anime. We got a black character. It's like, wow. And we're going to see Arthur do something cool because he is also a mechanic, much like Seabook.
Yeah.
So we can tell from his little jumpsuit.
And I hope you enjoyed him in this chunk of the movie because it's about all you got.
Hey, wait, we don't know that yet, right? They're going to the museum to take refuge. It's like someone ended this specific point so they could talk about this.
Fair enough.
And Eddy, when that tank broke out of the museum, I had to ask myself, did Southern Cross sue these people for taking their tank?
Okay, so this is an interesting thing, because so my understanding is that the anime industry is very incestuous. Lots of people work in a lot of different anime companies, but also it was particular that way in the late 80s. So how much of those kinds of things are, this is an homage to a previous project I worked on. How much this is here's a sly reference to another thing that we're also aware of, and how much of it is, I don't want to design another goddamn tank. I don't know, just use this one again and turn it upside down. Right. I don't know.
This isn't our Skyfire Jetfire discussion, is it?
A bit, right? You know, it's or like when Doctor Who would just spray paint props silver and turn them upside down, and that's a new kind of gun, right? It's it's like, I know what that is. You can't fool me. Or like a perfect example is when they had that symbol in the Planet of Gold, and it turns out that's actually the Gallifreyan High Council symbol now because they reused it, and now it's stuck. But if we go back and watch it, like, that's why they have the Gallifreyan High Council symbol there. Well, no, it's just because that was the prop they reused for a later serial. You know.
All right. So I want to take a minute to talk about my boy Arthur, because I know he's going to be awesome in a minute. After the tank defends him for a moment, Arthur joins forces with them to fight the invaders. They instantly kill the black character. Boom, dead, splat, gone, nothing. The only black character in the entire anime up to this point. And the white guy who fought right beside him from their side somehow seemed to live. Seabrook nearly breaks down, having lost his best friend, Arthur. And why am I spending so much time on Arthur? Because no one else that talks about this fucking anime well. So I figure I might as well be the guy that talks about how amazing Arthur is. He even grabs a little bazooka, doesn't shoot it. Seabrook and Cecily then lead the group of refugees into the lower levels of the colony, where they meet up with Seabrook's father, Leslie. Cecily's earrings are ringing. That's kind of weird, isn't it? As a group boards a lifeboat, Seabrook catches sight of Cecily's father, Theo, attempting to abduct her and tries to intervene. However, the Crossbone Vanguard arrives and takes Cecily, who is actually part of their family, who are the leaders of the Cosmo Babylonia. Seabrook is forced to retreat to the lifeboat, with Leslie stays behind to help a lost child.
So yeah, Arthur basically gets fridged, and because he dies purely to give motivation to the straight white male character. And it's like, oh man, just Seabrook, whatever, Seabiscuit. I don't even care anymore.
That would be a different spin on this love story, Eddie.
Seabiscuit, I love you so much.
Yeah,
See,
since
a horse
she is a
driving a
queen,
mecha, I would watch that.
I'm saying, Eddie, that if it was Seabiscuit, she is a queen. There is historical context, at least rumored, of a queen and her horse. So you go wherever you want to with that.
No, I'm just trying to figure like a horse in a mecha pilot suit, just kind of moving the controls around. That's
It would pilot just as well as Seabook does, Eddie, because the mecha itself responds to your thoughts. We're not there yet, so that's a spoiler.
Yeah, we're not there yet. Yeah. So
my first note here for you: I almost stopped watching this until I'm going to cover it.
Yeah, if you had it, been like, okay, well, let's figure something else out. But it's.
Do you know the only reason I didn't?
Why?
I watched it yesterday.
That would have sucked. Like, yeah. Watch something new now. Okay. Well, here's what I got.
We could have vamped a Doctor Who episode having not watched it.
I mean, fair. Yeah. It's like, I don't know. What are your memories of, Wolves of Fenris? Okay, cool. I can do that. No problem.
You know what? I would say what we would add episode, we say, all right, so we both agree that Ghostlight is one episode too short. If we were to add another episode to it, what would it be? Then we just riff for like an hour and a half about how we can make Ghostlight better, because it's an episode you don't like. It's an episode that I love.
What if the caveman actually had a point in the story? That would be amazing, right? No, so yeah, like I'm with you. This is where I was like, oh no, and so like, even here, I was like, all right, well, it's 91, it's Japan, it's an unfortunate trope, but maybe it'll get better from here, right? So I was like, maybe it's just a stumble, and then it's like suddenly we get into the Cecil's earrings subplot, and I'm like, did I miss something? I actually rewound at this point. I was like, is there a line I missed or something? And it's like, no, they just kind of suddenly become a plot point. I didn't even know there's no reference to her having earrings or having special or anything like at any point that I could find before this.
They specifically point out that she's wearing her mother's dress in the beginning. So there's a recurring theme about her mother's clothes. Hey,
that part, okay, the dress thing I did catch on, but they didn't specify the earrings were part of the ensemble, and I was just like, maybe there's a translation error here. Again, like I'm trying to maybe, but I was like, it's starting to pile up,
And it shouldn't, because we're like 15 minutes into the movie.
I know it's not that far into the movie.
So I think I think primarily most of the criticisms and comments we have are going to be focused around the fact that it's 50 episodes in an hour and a half. There's no way to do that and focus on the plot.
Right. Yeah. But again, like even in the middle of this, the same note I did, which is that there's still some really cool remnants of the horrors of war, because like at one point in time, the kids are they've acquired this beat up mobile suit that's been turned into kind of a tank thing, which is great. It's like let's make a small nod to the original series, but not without not having the exact same suit in. It's like kind of cobbled together a suit into kind of a tank like thing. And then it breaks down, and the soldiers show up, and then the leader of the soldiers literally saying like, we can use the kids as a shield. They won't fire on kids. And the kids are like, are you actually using us as human shields? And the guy's like, yep. And I'm like, that's the kind of stuff that when I watch Gundam, I love is that the watching how people become more moral and more galvanized in war, and others completely lose any semblance of ethics and become their real selves, and what they want out of this. But again, like that's like the last gasp of this in the movie that I saw, and so I
Yeah,
was like,
because
"Oh, this is cool," but yeah, it's gone.
it's instantly counterbalanced by Leslie, Seabrook's father, who's obviously a secret agent in a spacesuit and his jetpack, I think, that shoots bursts of air to move him through space, flying through the ship with gravity. So I'm curious how that works of itself.
Right.
But he takes down the mecha Eddie with like a little burst of flame by himself to save the kids before he shoots his own son in the next scene.
Yeah, and at the point, I'm like, I genuinely don't know what's happening, and my ability to go, maybe it's a translation error, maybe there's nuances here. At this point, it's like, no, it's just plot point thrown on top of plot points. It's I can't give any more excuses for this movie at this point.
And even now, I still have another note once again. When the shuttle with the kids finally get in the shuttle and they're going by it, this is after the Southern Cross tank is instantly destroyed because it was
Mhm.
like paper mache. I'll come back to that in a second. But the shuttle goes by. Is it a horror anime because the body's being blown out of the shuttle as the kids go by through space and like trees come by and the bodies float by and like bounce off of their shuttle? It's reinforced in Hearts of War, but it is more of a horror anime. Because I think
Yeah.
about Robotech that we saw that
Mm.
committed mass genocide of all these people in space. It was not graphic like this.
Right, right, and so at this point, because the pacing is so weird, what's kind of happening is the movie is luxuriating in two specific things, which is see how horrible this is, and also wouldn't it be great if royalty would save us all? And it, like the political intrigue and the horrors of war are just rapidly oscillating back and forth between these concepts, and so you're right. It stops being about the horrors of war; it just becomes about horror. To me, it starts to feel gratuitous at this point. It's okay.
Yeah.
The last one was because there's a characters making decisions about the kids being shields. It's like that's character decision, character growth, and so that's interesting stuff. But then it's like, what if we just show bodies bouncing off the hall? And I'm like, okay, now you're just enjoying this, right? Because
Too much.
this is happening so fast, I don't have a moment to breathe to appreciate these horrible moments. And also, I don't see decisions that led to this. It's just another bomb.
Yeah. And I specifically have a note here that Sam is a dick. Look at how he threw that little kid around inside the ship.
Neat.
Just saying, it's all thing.
Right.
Anything else about this before we move on?
So yeah, I mean, yeah. I referenced this, but like I kind of think it's a little bit more like so the Crossbone Vanguard show up, right, and uh, they are very much initially positioned as some kind of raiders or pirates, right? They've just shown up. They have iconography that's evocative of pirates. They don't seem to have any kind of political agenda. There's references to a Cosmo Babylonia kind of in the background, but those two concepts aren't joined until Cecily joins up. And then suddenly it's like, okay, there's the Cosmo Babylonia, which is a different rival group that wants to go after this group, which again, fine. A lot of Gundam is Space Nation A hates Space Nation B and they have a fight. That's ultimately a lot of it comes down to. That's fine. But then Cecily's part of a noble house that runs the Cosmo Babylonia, and the Crossbone Vanguard are like their knights functionally. And I'm like, where is all of this coming from? And the answer is this coming from what would have been the first like 13 episodes of the show, right? There was slowly built up this group of these organizations, and we were probably seeing the Rona family like cutaways to them talking and plotting and scheming, and then the big twist of like, oh, the character Cecily we care about is secretly part of these evil nobles that we're supposed to hate. And now what do we feel? But the problem is that none of this is spelled out. Or sorry, it is spelled out in an info dump. It's not spelled out in any way, shape, or form up to this. So it's just here's a bunch of new characters, and now you have to care about them. And it's like, but I don't. I barely care about Cecily.
So, with your more extensive Gundam knowledge, is the Crossbone Vanguard something that you're previously aware of, or is it strictly in this film?
Strictly in this. Now, uh, little bit of my research. So in the process of this, I stumbled across a video that said what went wrong with F91. So I was like, well, I gotta watch that. And one of the things that that video pointed out was that there was a manga that this show was supposed to be based on, and Crossbone Vanguard was like the center of that manga. And so there's a lot of backstory that the manga goes into that this movie obviously does barely touches. That the show probably would have gone into if they had gotten the full season.
Because I know there was a sequel or 2 sequel novels or something that came after this, this
Right.
happens 10 years later.
Right, right, and there's attempts to kind of fill in gaps and all of that. Um, uh, but now separately, uh, there is an interesting trend in anime of this time period of benevolently fascist uh, royal families that pop up a fair bit. Um, uh, Legend of the Space Heroes is one that's not had it's only very recently gotten a US translation, but it's like 130 bazillion episodes. It's very long. But that's a big part of it is that there are two rival factions. One is a bunch of benevolent fascists, or not. I keep saying fascists. Sorry, benevolent dictators. So I mean, who they run the families, but everyone loves them because they're good rulers against a group of democratic people who are there are also good people inside of it, but also they're falling apart under the weight of their own bureaucracy and corruption. Um, and I think some of that comes from, and this is me guessing, is that Japan has had a long imperial tradition, and they have complicated feelings of how their emperor relates to the country has shifted as a result of World War II. So I feel like some of these animes are kind of much like how the original Gundam was about working out feelings about having a nuclear bomb dropped on you. How Akira is a bit like having a nuclear bomb
Uh-huh,
dropped on you.
uh-huh.
This is a bit more of like, how do we feel about do we actually want an emperor or not? And would that be good for us or not? But unfortunately, this movie does kind of slants pretty weirdly on the side of things would be okay if we just had a, one person in charge of a dynasty that would just take care of all these problems. So it is kind of a weird thing that keeps popping up that I'm deeply uncomfortable with, especially in modern day where no kings is a very real problem.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sorry, no kings is a very real thing that we should be doing as opposed to people who want to be king is what I'm saying. That's the problem part. So watching that now, it's a bit like I don't I don't like what this movie's telling me because it's basically saying Cecily is a secret princess, and this is your Star Wars reference, I think, is like part of a secret dynasty of people with secret powers that if only those people were in control of things, everything would be better, right? And it's just
That's
like,
one of my Star Wars references. Some of it comes from the music, but then again, the music could be they took inspiration from the same source that like John Williams took inspiration from, but it's all over this. And it's not
yeah,
only her secret princessness. All right, let's just do this. Cecily's
yeah,
taken to meet her real father, Kurzo, or as I will call him going forward, Darth Vader, and her grandfather, Mitzer, who both dream of overthrowing the corrupt Earth Federation and replacing it with a more and just aristocracy.
hmm
Iron Mask wears a mask and is shamed for losing his wife to Theo, Cecily's adopted father, who sold her out. Her father drops exposition about the Cosmo Babylonia plot and how that is what the Frontier 4 has become. They want her to be the queen, as the masses will want an idol, but she refuses, but reluctantly joins forces with them.
right. Which is
I was waiting for her to break out into a Min May type song as soon as they said idol.
yes, that's a whole nother weird thing. Is like idol. I don't know if it's a translation choice or if that was actually in the original text. It seems like a weird thing because you're right. It's very much more of the pop star thing. Um, but I think that's also kind of combined with um, there's a lot of Princess Diana vibe in this, right? Of the here's the royal that we can get behind, and you'll be the face, the publicly acceptable face of the things we actually want to do, which is institutes a despotic monarchy and claim that we're being benevolent. And you're right, like all of this is coded as villain coded, but then the movie kind of just doesn't want to actually say, no, actually, this is bad. It's like, because look at all this stuff, it's corrupt, and look at all these horrible things that happen. It's like, we can't, because you didn't show us any of this stuff. You're just telling us this stuff happens.
And all in the backdrop, the battle keeps raging on. So part of my entire thing is there is massive mecha fights all over the place.
Right.
And I know it's backdrop to try to highlight the political aspects of it, but it is so much of it, and it is so, in one sense, visceral, in the other sense, banal, that it becomes white noise. And at
Yeah.
that point in time, it makes everything else boring because the battles aren't even interesting anymore because there's so much of them, and they're not enough of a focus to move anything along. And that could be them trying to highlight that war becomes pointless. But then if you can talk about the war being pointless, great. But then your political piece should hit harder to keep me
Right.
engaged for the next plot beat. And it loses kind of focus on both.
Right. And it goes back to what you're saying before about the it's trying to be a horror movie and a deep political intrigue thriller all at the same time, and it's failing at both as a result because neither lets up.
And then they keep throwing the kids in at us, and like they want me to care about the kids, but I don't care about the kids because I haven't spent enough time with them. And the few times I do jump back to them, I get Sam, who's a dick, and Seabook, who is just bland.
Yeah, like, so at this point, kind of what's happened is, at the beginning we had an interesting combination of kids, and so this might be an interesting, and probably if it was a show, would have been an interesting ensemble piece of how they differently would not. Um, as soon as they leave that initial invasion, everything is about Cecily and Seabook, and everybody else is just a support character. Um, they stop mattering almost immediately. Um, to the point where it's like, at least Arthur had the dignity of being killed as opposed to just being sidelined for the whole movie. So at least there's that.
Anything else about that quick beat? I wanted to cover that because that's Cecily meeting her parent, her
Right? Yeah.
family,
No,
and
I,
everything
I was
else.
inadvertently drifting into that. So yeah, that's fine. Let's move on.
The kids link up with the Federation forces, making their way to Colony Frontier 1. Every time I say Frontier, I keep thinking of Frontiers from Doctor Who. And are told if they can fly, they can fight. We also meet Chief Petty Officer Ross, another black character. The Federation government official stance is that the Vanguard are a joke and not to be taken seriously. To the horror of the survivors, Seabook learns about the prototype G91 and his mom worked on it, while Cecily is engaged in a philosophical debate with her grandfather about the equality of people and listening to his lies of not killing a single civilian while the Federation didn't care about them at all. Back with the kids, Reese Arno explains what their mother meant and how to fix the F91. Seabook is ordered to pilot it as so few soldiers are left and all of them are engineering students.
Right. Um, so this is one of the big ones where they just they throw a civic word around that if you don't know anything about Gundam would make no sense, and the movie does not explain otherwise, which is new type. I think we talked about new type before, but basically new type is you are a psychic and it gives you special magic powers to pilot mecha. That's just new type. Also occasionally has, depending on which version of Gundam, it seems like they also have occasionally actual psychic powers, but ultimately new type is just you're better at being a pilot than everybody else because you're a new type. And it's a way to explain this is why this 18, 17-year-old kid is in a military machine doing better than hardened soldiers. That is how they explain it. But they never explain what new type actually is. They just say he's a new type.
So they talk about new type a little bit later and more. We're getting there. I think you caught like the first reference to it here, but then we get
Right, but
purple hair shortly.
sure, but and the point at this point where they're telling him why he has to pilot it, they just say because he's a new type and don't bother to explain. Right.
Yeah.
Um and granted, I mean, we've been talking about how we're sick of info dumps, and it's like normally it'd be cool, great, you don't have to explain it, but the explanation I'd forgotten they explained it later because I had checked out at this point, I guess. Um, but this was a key point where some exposition would have actually been needed, and they didn't do that. They explained everything else that I didn't care about.
Eddie, there's no black character. I was super excited.
I know.
And I point them out because I actually listen to a couple other people talk about the movie. No one ever really reviews the movie. They just go over the plot of the movie.
Mhm.
Because I watched 2 YouTube videos on it, and all they did was they talk about the exact plot beats of the movie without any actual discussion about the movie itself or going in detail. It's like they're afraid to talk about it. But no one ever mentions the black characters.
Well, I mean, well, A, I think we know why, but, um, B, it having watched this movie, part of the reason why I think we're finding stuff to talk about is because we don't have a lot of baggage around this franchise, and so we can dig into some of this stuff, whereas if you're talking about this in context of all of the other Mobile Suit Gundam stuff, it's like, and this movie also exists, I guess, you know? I mean,
So part of me would like some baggage though to see if I can find correlations and links to the previous Gundam franchises, because I know that like that charge counterattack, whatever, is referenced in some of the stuff that I looked up and I saw, and I want to know if any of those characters are here later on in their timelines. So like that'd be fun
yeah,
stuff to know.
yeah. Yeah. Although my understanding is that because Charge, I've not watched it, but Charge Counterattacks, I understand it is the movie sequel to the original cartoon and is apparently kind of hard to parse if you haven't watched the 70 some episodes of the original cartoon.
Okay.
That's my guess.
So up to this point, there's been different advancements in technology for the mecha, which we've seen. Like
Right.
the cross Vanguard people have better mechas than what the Federation people do because they're like decimating them left and right with fewer number of people.
Mhm.
Which is why this prototype becomes super cool, I assume. But if I can't get over the fact that his mom helped build like the organic brain for the super cool prototype mecha that he's going to get to fly in, and that his sister is the only person who figured out how to make it work. I can't move past Eddie. I gave this movie a whole lot, and now it's asking me to take this other additional leap too. I can't do
Well,
it.
I mean, you haven't been giving the movie a whole lot, let's be fair, but you're right.
I did. I even tried to come up with a reason why Cecily's earrings are linked to her mother's clothing. I
But I agree with you in the sense that um, the movie really wants you to feel this gigantic epic scale. And to your earlier joke, Star Wars has the same problem is that they keep doubling down and interconnecting the cast of characters they have. So everything feels really, really tiny as a result.
mm-hmm. Ooh. Um, I don't mention him here, but and I specifically don't mention him because the person that's ordering Seabook around and also kicks Seabook in the head to tell him to like man up essentially and jump in that mecha and fight people is someone named Cosmo.
Uh huh.
Eddie, do you know how frustrating it is to have one of the characters on the Federation side working with Seabook and the rest of the kids called Cosmo, while the antagonistic side is trying to build a Cosmo Babylonia as their empire? That's a bad creative decision.
I agree.
I give this movie a lot by saying it was condensed down and trying to like bring up the high points. That is the only thing I'm going to say right now. It's really as a bad choice. You don't have a character name versus like the empire name you're going with.
Right. Right. And similarly to my earlier note, like um, when Cecily's having a debate with her grandfather, and he's like, "Well, that's because the Federation's corrupt." And then we cut back to the Federation being objectively corrupt, right? Uh, um, I feel like the movie very much wanted to have this nuance of putting the two political structures into conflict and seeing what happens. Because again, I've seen other anime that does exactly this conversation between democracy and dictatorship. But what we end up with is just no. Everyone in the Federation is an asshole, so maybe they should all be overthrown and replaced with benevolent monarchy and a 17-year-old queen, apparently.
All right, I can move on. Other than saying I was surprised to see Wonder Woman and her golden lasso used so effectively in this movie to save Seabook. Seabook is forced to pod the Gundam as a distraction to save them all, while saving the only other mobile suit pilot on their side. He easily kills 3 invaders before The reality of taking life hits him hard like a brick for 30 seconds. Then he uses the F91 to return to Frontier 4. Eddie, I checked 4 times because I wasn't sure if I fell asleep watching
Yeah.
this movie for what happened here. Where Cosmo Babylonia has already repaired most of the damage to the colony. It has it fully occupied. He infiltrates the Rowan estate and makes contact with Cecily. However, he is forced to flee without her. When the guards pursue him, the Cosmo Babylonia have a parade to celebrate their victory and give political speeches. Someone takes a shot at Iron Mass. Leslie helps Seabrook escape Frontier 4, aka Cosmo Babylonia 2, but he suffers a mortal head injury in the process and dies on return trip to Frontier 1. Another black character. Theo brings Nadia home to her daughter, and she confronts her husband and her father, only to be word checked by Cecily. Darth Vader / Iron Mask murders Theo before walking off Doctor Doom style down the hall. Boom. Eddie is stunned, people. I don't know if he's stunned by my Doctor Doom drop or the entire thing I just summarized.
It's more just looking at this. I'm looking at this summary and going, I don't remember any of this. This is just a bunch of stuff that happens. So I'm staring at this going, did I miss something? Did I like this actually explains the plot of the movie better than the movie I actually watched.
Oh god. So yeah, no, it's, and I think I mentioned him later, but Bridget or whatever his name is, the other mecha pilot who Seabook and Bridget fight off a bunch of them, but Seabook kills like 3 of them just instantly with one shot from the Gundam. And he's horrified. Right. But then there's a jump that is just weird. Like it's suddenly Seabook back on Frontier 4, sneaking around James Bond style without any exposition. No idea how it happened. And I only knew it was him because Cecily said Seabook. I was like, oh, wait, that is Seabook, isn't it?
Right, because he's generic bland protagonist, right? And like, even though there's been a war going on and there's been lots of people talking about the war, it wasn't until this bit that actually explained, oh, the Cosmo Babylonia did successfully invade Frontier 4 and take it over, and the people who lived there had been pushed back to Frontier 1. That's what happens there.
But not everyone has been pushed back to Frontier 1 because some of them are now citizens of Cosmo Babylonia. Some of them are citizens of Cosmo Babylonia now.
Okay. Right.
And some of them in there are resistance fighters.
Right. But
an unknown amount of time has gone by.
Yeah, it's like because I thought this was all just one big long battle and it was happening over the course of like several days or maybe a week or two. And it's like, no, apparently there's like months or years that have changed. And it's like, okay, no, the actual lines of the conflict have shifted. And I thought maybe this was Cosmo Babylonia had managed to start infiltrating Frontier 1, or that, or they had captured some people from Frontier 4 and transplanted them to where they were living. And I was like, oh, so they've actually invaded Frontier 4. That's what's going on here.
Yeah. And they've been there long enough that they repaired it. Like, not kind of fixed it. It's nearly fully repaired.
Right.
That's first, I would assume, even at super advanced technology, a year at least.
Which is why I thought this was their home base. I thought they just captured a bunch of people and moved back to their home base.
Which would make sense why you'd think that, especially if you look at the kids, because there's still that little baby that's still a baby these year or twos that have gone by.
Right. Yeah. That's why I was stunned, because I was like, oh, is that what's supposed to have happened? I genuinely don't know.
Yeah. It's because it's all condensed down into this like hour and a half thing, and it doesn't work. And don't get me wrong, as a writer, I understand not wanting to kill any part of your baby. Not at all. But you can't not do that with this. If you got an hour and a half, you focus on one piece of it. And then you maybe add on another layer or two, but then that's it. And you just let it go.
Yeah. And again, going back to keeping everything in and oscillating between concepts, you kind of mentioned very briefly, one of the things I do remember from this chunk is that Seabook kills people and seems horrified by it. for about 3 seconds. And then there's a apparently this is I'll call it a notorious bit of Gundam lore, because apparently the whole point of this chunk is that Seabook realizes, he kills like 3 or 4 like in one shot. It's like a
Oh
ridiculous
yeah.
ridiculous shot. And he's horrified by that, and so his second guessing himself is what causes him to become a worse pilot later. We'll talk about that in a minute. And I'm like, if someone in a YouTube video hadn't explained that to me, I never would have got that from this movie. Which apparently is a common complaint about this movie, is that is a subplot that that is apparently what the plot's supposed to be, and creators have explained that plot, and everyone who's seen the movie's gone, I didn't see any of that shit. So you can there are these little, so what we're left with is just what feels like, oh, look at how horrible war is. And it's like, no, you're just showing me a cool space battle and one kid who's been mildly traumatized by it. And it's pretty frustrating because what shows a really good example of the trauma of teenagers killing people? A completely different Gundam franchise, right? It's like the Gundam franchise is good at this. This is a very bad example of the thing that this franchise is known for doing well.
Seabrook Arno is no Hiro Yui, is all I'm going to say.
God, no.
Which, another love story. All I'm saying.
Hiro.
As Leslie does, he does a big, massive info dump too. Like,
Yes.
There's just so many info dumps. It's less is more. Cecily joins her Crossbone Vanguard under Zabine's command. He helps train Cecily to be a mobile suit pilot and warns her that there are several factions within Cosmo Babylonia working against each other's interests, with one faction working on a secret super weapon codenamed Bug. Anna Marie switches sides and provides intel on Cosmo Babylonia because she's jealous, and becomes another mobile pilot for the Federation epic space battle. Seabrook returns to Frontier 1, where he is again forced by the Federation to help defend the colony against the impending attack by the Crossbone Vanguard. Another black character! Seabrook and the space colony forces engage. The enemy reveal how much more powerful the Gundam is. It shows how much more powerful the Gundam is during the fight.
Because
And everyone is the biggest point here, Eddie, out of all of this, is that everyone is stunned that Cecily cut her hair.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's a lot to unpack here, but the first one is like, Cecily's is a badass Gundam pilot. Okay, I'm interested. Everyone's gonna talk shit about how she cut her hair. It's like, really, this is the fucking takeaway we're gonna have from this subplot.
But combined with
what this complicated political thing that we're having trouble articulating needs more now? Even more factions.
All right, but the reason you know that Cecily is still a good character, Eddie, is because she lies about Seabook.
Yes, but what's even more annoying about the haircut subplot?
What?
Because this fucking animation company, she cuts her hair. It's a big thing. Multiple characters remark on that. And she puts her helmet on. And then she sees Seabook. And she goes, but I'm secretly good. She takes her helmet off. And her hair's long again. The power of goodness makes her hair grow, Chris.
That is to show us that time has progressed.
Is that what that's supposed to do? And not just shitty animation?
I'm trying to give this movie stuff. But this is also a point where we get more talk about new types.
Right. And to be fair, the way
maybe a new type can do anything.
Right. Since you reminded me, this is the part where they actually talk about new types. I was so blown away by trying to figure out what the subplot was. I've forgotten this is where they actually do talk about new type stuff. So maybe, I don't know, maybe being a new type makes your hair grow. I don't know. Oh my God. And
there's so much. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm still.
Well, I was just going to move on to the space battle that should be epic and is just slow and plodding somehow.
What?
All
the battles are slow and plodding.
Well, okay, fair, but this is supposed to be like the big one. Apparently, it feels like it should be I don't know, right? Like they all blur together in my head, which is a big problem. But I was briefly excited, like, okay, so this is going to be a mecha pilot. To be fair, at this point in mecha anime, there aren't very many women mecha pilots. That's a trend that has changed over the years, but it's still uncommon enough that I was like, okay, this is actually pretty cool. And of course, they undercut it immediately, but they have her in a battle, and it's just like it's just eh. And I'm like, this should be like a big, hey, she's getting into a mech suit and she's fighting and she maybe has to fight with the person she's friends with and or loves. And it's just like pew 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 pew.
This is the part where you probably want to talk about Seabook being a bad pilot because it is shown here that he's a bad pilot, and I guess this is what they're talking about after
Yes.
he kills those people because he trips coming out
He's
or something, and everyone's
apparently right. Apparently he's now reluctant and that's throwing off his instincts. He's overthinking himself and second guessing himself. And it's just like, nah, he just sucks, mate.
he wasn't a good pilot before, so that doesn't work.
Right. Right.
If he come out and everyone had been, oh my god, how did you do that? And then this happened, maybe.
Right. And it's like, and you make note of this, like, that's the whole point of these shows, right? The whole point of these shows is that whether you buy into the trope or not, the trope is teenagers with psychic powers are good at piloting military machinery and become soldiers, and that is the thing we're going to talk about. And what this show has done is that we're going to do that, but they just kind of suck at it. And it's like,
So
so why put the kid in the pilot in the suit?
as one of the things I found out is that the new type concept is a retcon to kind of explain the original Gundams and everything else for like the pilots being kids.
Okay.
Because it wasn't there before, is what I read. So if I'm
Okay.
incorrect, listeners, please let us know. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. They should just have them be naturally talented and just let it go.
Sure, right? Don't explain it. Now, because now I will say, I don't feel this is exclusive to Japanese fandom, but Japanese fandom is the finger that keeps getting pointed at, so I will use that for just purpose of discussion. Um, there is this trend of wanting to have to explain anything. So, for example, I'm going back to my franchise that I'm familiar with. Um, there is a quote unquote official explanation in Japanese fandom, like from one of the animation studios that explains how every Transformer show is in continuity with each other. That's just ridiculous, right? As a huge fan of Transformers, that's nonsense and should be considered nonsense, right? Um, but they have a very, very elaborate explanation why, because apparently that chunk of fandom really feels like there needs to be a cohesion there. I personally feel we've talked about my thoughts about canon. I feel like this is the absolute catastrophic edge case of why it's terrible. Is exactly this kind of thing. But uh, uh, I wonder how much of that is, well, the people that are generally enjoying this stuff are asking us for an explanation, and so we have to explain it. Superhero comics run into this occasionally too. It's like that's where the Speed Force comes from for the Flash comics. At some point in time, someone's like, "Well, if someone actually ran that fast, his eyes would explode and his clothes would disintegrate." It's like, well, because Speed Force, right? Um, and if it, and so like I agree with you. Like I suspect if I watched newer Gundam, they probably are now doing interesting things with the new type concept. But at this point, it definitely feels like that's just the word we slap on. Here's why this happens, and we talked about this a little bit with Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is that because that show is all about that's stupid, right? It's the if you put a kid into a machine like this, they're gonna be traumatized and bad things are going to happen. That's the point of that show. So that's probably as a reaction to the fact that this is very clearly just a band aid.
Yeah, I agree. A minor quibble for me that I couldn't get over is how everyone for the longest time kept saying acting captain so and so. And it was consistent up until like maybe the last 15 minutes of the movie, they just called her captain.
Right.
It's I have a bunch of quibbles at this point in time. That was a minor one that I just you know what? I'm just gonna write it down because I have a lot of these.
Fair. I mean, find your joy where you can. Like, to be fair, you have noticed more black characters than I have, and usually I've gotten pretty good at this. But at this point, it's such a blur to me. At this point, movie, it's like like, oh, cool. I'm excited that actually there are more than one black character in an anime from '91. That's actually genuinely exciting.
It
Um,
is, because I've watched
but
a lot of anime, and the reason I point them out is because there's so few black characters in anime.
sure,
I'm
right?
not even
No,
gonna talk about how they're drawn. I'm just gonna acknowledge them and move on for right
sure.
now.
Well, yes, that's a whole separate conversation. Um, but like, so like, I'm a little mad at myself because I did miss that. But this chunk of the movie is frankly a slog.
There's one more in there I missed when they showed up, so I apologize for that, but there's one
Okay.
more. Zabine, Cecily's brother, blows Anna Marie away, who was a former trainee of his, quipping about those who can't control their emotions. More epic battle! As ground forces blow up aerial forces, Seabook and Cecily briefly tangle. She's saved by his overheating gun and a rando soldier before they recognize each other. She quickly changes sides as the battle ends, and they're brought aboard the space colony. She's confronted by her family sins. The captain orders full repairs on all mobile suits, admitting blind luck is what she specifically says has gotten them this far. As Seabrook and Cecily have a heart to heart, while Reese and her recently returned estranged mother confront each other over her betrayal as a chief engineer tells him Seabrook is a new type and fighting in the war. He drops a sick burn on the mother, who's upset her son is in danger. Seabrook tells her to repair the suit. That's all that's important. And new types are evolved humans. Darth Vader unmasked arrives at Frontier 1 and deploys the bugs, automated war machines designed quickly to hunt down humans. He believes that Earth's population must be purged to preserve its environments and intends to use Frontier 1 as a testing ground for the bugs. The space colony launches 3 mobile unit suits, Seabrook, Cecily, and Brigitte, to battle the bugs before they take out the odd man out mecha pilot, leaving only Cecily and Seabook. The pair work in unison, destroying the bugs as Cecily destroys the mothership, as the bug was originally supposed to destroy 9/10 of the human population, Thanos style.
So, do you ever watch TV shows where one of the characters is a really big fan of soap operas, and that character tries to explain the plot of the soap opera that we're not watching and how ludicrous those plots sound? That's what went through my head when you started describing this stuff. It's like, Seabrook and Cecily are fighting each other, but then Cecily finds out her secret twin sister's actually not dead anymore, and then Seabrook is possessed by the ghost of his previous lover. I mean, that's exactly what the plot sounds like in my head at this point. It's like, this would have been probably really cool over 50 episodes,
Yeah.
but it's just nonsense right now.
And it would make sense for Cecily as a character also to have gone through all that journey instead of this hour and a half where she's a good guy, bad guy, maybe bad guy, good guy.
Right, and this is a good point because my frustration with okay, so my frustration with Cecily because she's the only person that has anything resembling a character arc here, even though it's more of a character corkscrew, but whatever. Um, Seabrook has no personality. We ignore him. But like, I would see over the course of 50 episodes, 20 episodes, even of someone who feels like no one cares about her except for uh, what she could do for them. Finding a family that she didn't realize she had and feeling like she has value and worth. Agreeing to contribute to the military plans of that family and therefore building herself up as a pilot, something she did not want to do initially, but eventually falling into that because she feels like this family gives her meaning, does that, only to discover that there's actually secret, horrible sins underneath the thing, and she has to constantly fight amongst the other factions who want to remove her, to eventually realize that she is being used by this family in much the same way that she thought she was being used way back when Frontier 4 started. And so comes full circle. And the only person who, through all of that, gave her any value and worth was her friend Seabook. That could have been a really cool arc. Compressed
Yeah.
into 35 minutes. It's just a bunch of nonsense.
Oh.
Oh, and also she's secretly a mutant.
It's ugh, I'm trying not to harp on it too much, but the sheer amount of exposition that we're still given every other turn, and they do go and explain the term new types for us. At least Seabook does in his canon world where they're evolved humans. So
Okay, sure. And granted, I did miss that because again, there's a lot of nonsense here. It kind of rolled off
oh,
me.
I
So
agree.
I accept that. But even that, he's like, new type of evolved humans. I'm like, okay, but you suck. Nothing in the movie has proven to me that you're good at this. I mean, even here, um, he survives. He survives, and a character, a supporting character to his team, straight up admits it's because we were lucky. So even the movie's like, yeah, no, Seabrook's not good. He just got lucky. Oh,
Okay. I wanna talk about these bugs. Eddie, how is an automated disc-like shaped machine that can put a saw out that targets humans able to destroy mecha so easily?
because saws. I don't know. I mean, um, I get the concept here, right? Is the which is again something else that Gundam seems to go back to from what I've seen of it, which is that you cannot replace the human equation in war, and that is the tragedy of war. Is that if you completely mechanized war, that makes war even worse. And so the best way to conduct war beyond not doing it at all is to put people's lives on the line. And so this is another kind of stab at that. And I use a stab very advisedly because what it ends up coming back is just Darth Vader doesn't like how his family is not doing genocide fast enough. So I'm going to make robots to do genocide faster.
Yeah. Oh, something I did like. I love the little zip guns they use in Zero G to move around.
That was fun. I do. I didn't. Actually, there were a couple scenes like that where, um, I don't want to use the word hard sci-fi because nothing about this is hard science fiction. But they do interesting things with the idea of these are zero G environments that beyond just they're all staying on the ground because that's how we have to put the camera.
Yeah. It's like that's something I like. Um, okay. The way that Cecily and Seabook deduce the entire plot of Darth Vader is once Bridget is killed, they go back to back spinning, shooting down the bugs, and they tell you the plot and how they don't tell you how they figured it out, but they figured it out by doing that.
Yeah. Yep. Mhm. They figured out the plot because it was 1 hour and 45 minutes into the movie.
All right, I'm gonna finish this thing.
Okay.
Uh Darth Vader, enraged, deploys his own mobile armor. Federation reinforcements arrive, only to quickly be destroyed as Seabrook and Cecily battle Iron Mask, who admits to being a cyber new type. He terrorizes Cecily as he destroys her armor, coming in after her, ranting about his ego has expanded to allow him to kill 9/10 of all humanity. Cecily is tossed into space as Seabrook destroys the Ralphisa. That's not how you pronounce it. I'm doing it. In response, Zabine arrives on the scene, spies in on Seabrook, shouting for Cecily, but decides to spare Seabrook and the space ark due to his disagreement over Iron Mask's use of bugs. After a desperate search, Seabrook is able to find and rescue Cecily because his mom came and told him to use the Force. As the space ark arrives, the duo float in space together. The end. With the words,
This
this
is
is
only the
only
beginning,
the beginning.
which never have I ever taken a sentence like that to be more of a threat than watching this movie.
I did for one other thing. Remo Williams,
Oh, okay, fair.
because it ends the same way.
So, are you threatening
It-
me?
do you remember the Remo Williams sequel?
Was there one actually? I never thought there was.
Nope. Much like this movie, there was no sequel to
Well,
this
right.
movie.
So I was saying that was like the thing. Much like oh shit. There's another one that
Can't say that
famously
about
said there was gonna be a
Spaceballs
sequel.
anymore, because
No,
Spaceballs
Spaceballs
2 is
coming back.
coming.
Yeah, no, it's not Spaceballs. It's another eight. Anyway, There's an 80s movie that ended with a to come with another sequel and never did. Anyway, irrelevant. Point is, um, yeah, this is just they ran out of time. He literally has the power of plot to figure things out because he's a new type, because reasons. Um, I didn't like this.
That is your entire final thought. I did like this. All right.
All right. Let
What?
me try to be a little more analytical about it. Unless you have another analysis.
No, go ahead.
I think a lot of my frustration comes from the fact is we've had this conversation a few times. I can see the potential in this, right? If much like my not about Doctor Who, if this was a cut down version of even a 13 episode series, right? And it had more room to breathe and tell these stories, it might be more interesting. Alternatively, if they had cut like 80% of the subplots and just made it about these two kids who are caught up on opposite sides of a war and ultimately end up fighting together to prevent a bigger plot. This could have been a good, even possibly even a great mecha film.
But they can't do that. I think we literally watched an anime during our anime run.
That's the problem, right? Is that if you reduce it down that much, it basically becomes a lot of other mecha anime. So what you're left with is that if you can't do those things, you should at least have cool giant robot fights. And the movie doesn't even manage that. And then so that's where it kind of falls down to me. Like, if it'd been like, okay, I have watched a lot of things that have been like, this plot is nonsense, but I'm enjoying the visual spectacle of it. Plenty of things I've watched like that. I can't even get that satisfaction because I need at least a basic context for what I'm watching. And after the first 15, 20 minutes, I don't know what's going on. And it's not because it's a subtitled movie. It's not because it's not in a language I speak, because there's plenty of media I consume. I have no problem following along with this. And on top of all of that, that this was intentionally meant to be a point for people like me who don't have an in-depth knowledge of it and would want to know more. It's like you have literally done the opposite. You made me feel like this franchise is even more confusing and opaque and hard to follow, and I'm even less inclined to watch more of it. If it hadn't been for the fact that we have separately watched other Gundam stuff and liked it, if this had been my first exposure to Gundam, I'd be like, oh god, no. Nuh-uh.
My thoughts go back to how I started the episode. This should not have become a movie. It should have been the 50 episodes, or even like a 4 1-hour OAV series that came out. Because then you could have retained a lot of the different plot. You could have shifted some of the focus around, and it would have worked. Because I like this animation style. I like a lot of the animation I saw. Some of the character designs may not have been my favorite, but it still worked. The fact, all of my stuff comes down to the fact there's too much in this movie. There's so much in this movie that it is packed filled, but yet it's slow. Which, if you have a movie about war like this with so many battles, it shouldn't feel slow. And it felt slow, and not slow in a good way either. So it comes back to removing maybe 80% of this plot, or shifting the focus. Like, they could have made this entire movie about new types, and we get into like really what a new type is, and that would have been super fascinating. Then you could have even focused on Seabrook killing those people, and then it being like a thing about him figuring out what the fuck that means to him as a person, while Cecily goes on her own little personal journey. You've had two different characters going on a journey together. We could have even started with the kids, and we could have left the kids right around the museum, or right after that they got off the space arc, and then we shift focus to one frontier ship, and we have it all be about that.
Right. Yeah. I could even see a really cool trilogy, right? Where it's like the first movie is about Seabrook, the second movie is about Cecily, and the third movie is their conflict, right? Something. This need a different format. I can certainly understand why people involved in that. Let me write some novels Let me tell you the story that should have been, because this honestly would be a really cool novel series, like a good 3 novel series. I could totally see this story happening, you know. Um, but yeah, it's a shame because I was about to say this movie's not bad, and that's just wrong. This movie's bad. Um, uh, it's not unwatchable. No, that's not even true either. It is
It
pretty
is.
unwatchable. What am I
It's
trying to say
almost
here?
unapproachable.
Um, uh, there were bits and moments that I really enjoyed and stood out to me. I will probably remember to my dying day a mother being killed by a chunk of metal, right? Like there are moments where there's genuine like chilling moments. They're genuinely interesting character moments in this, and I wish they were in a better movie.
And I'm not gonna lie. Well, I talked a lot about Off at the start. They presented a number of black characters in an anime. They
Yeah,
gave them lines. They
yeah,
gave some of the motivations and things like that. I didn't necessarily like the characters, but that's okay because they were there and they had multiple characters. And just so it's one, I am the one black character in anime. There were multiple black characters in anime. They were all different and they served different purposes, which is why I didn't break the movie how I could have. I just played up my author bit because it was funny. And that is a great thing. My final entire synopsis of this movie, it is a great television series trapped in a movie.
yeah, yeah. I think it's really the way it ended up.
So, Eddie, what are we going to do next time to clear our palate from this to be something totally different that will elevate the medium from where we are in the dregs right now?
Jesus, no pressure. Um, so we're gonna watch Pat Labor, and this comes with a couple of caveats. One, you can't just say Pat Labor because there's a very complicated way to look into it. So, if we're talking about the first animated television series, I do have to qualify it like that. And that is episode 1, uh, sometimes translated as Ingram Activated. Episode 2, sometimes translated as Kanuka Has Come. Episode 11, Eve's Terror. Episode 31, Tragedy and Rain. And episode 38, Underground Labyrinth Case. So that should give you a nice spread of the 47 episode run. Secondly, is that it is a show that is based around police. But and this was a show that actually, to be perfectly honest, we debated covering and I rejected because I was worried about being propaganda. I have since revised that opinion. I'll talk more about that when we talk about it next week. But it is very, very not the show I thought it was going to be, and also there's some interesting behind the scenes stuff that make it, I think, more worth watching as a result. So it's a long way to say we're gonna watch Pat Labor. We're gonna watch the original cartoon that was shown on
What
television.
year
It's
is
literally
that?
called the TV series. 87, I think.
Okay.
And
So
if you
I'll
watch the introduction, it will say Pat Labor, the television series. So it's actually very clear.
I also have never seen this, and I don't think I know anything about it. Although I think Artellis Games put out an anime TTRPG of it that could be on my shelf that I haven't read, and I bought it in the 90s too. So
Maybe,
I'll have to dig it out
maybe
and see.
it was definitely Pat Labor. The reason why we almost covered it was because it is one of the more iconic 80s anime franchises. But it has a very complicated history as to why it's not as popular as it is now. That's interesting to dig into. And it has some interesting nuances to it. So I've also not watched this stuff. I'm going in relatively unaware, but I'm more excited about it than when we first watched it. And I watched half an episode and went, I don't know about this. So give it another shot.
And if people are curious, for this time around, for this run, I picked the great movie that we watched today, and Eddie picked Pack Labor. So we'll see
Right.
how those shake out. Eddie, if people
Right.
want to give you money, talk to you about how great of a TV series this could have been, where can they do that?
I would love to talk to you about Gundam Wing. No, honestly, Gundam Wing's everything better. But no, you can talk to me on the Darker Hue Discord. I hang out there pretty frequently. I'm happy to chat about things. In fact, we made someone very happy because at the time of recording this, someone's like, "I hope you covered the Oxbow incident." It's like, friend, you're going to be very happy, because we covered it and I loved it, and we talk about it later. So if you want to give me money and talk about that, best way to do that is to buy my silly dog game, Realms of Pugmire, and you can find that at realmsofpugmire.com. How about you?
You can come into the Dark Hue Discord. I'm there all the time, mostly posting memes because that's what I do. If you want to support me, you can come into my Patreon, and it's like Harlem Unbounding with Chris Spivey, where I'm now offering tiers where I'll run games for people if I get enough people that want to do it. Because I figured that'd be fun. Of course, I'll do it lo-fi, which means we'll be chilling and I'll be drinking and running campaigns, one shots, whatever. That's about it.
Sounds good. Well, that we'll see you next time. We talk about the patrol laborers, the pet labor.